Hello, and welcome to Zap the Gender Pay Gap, the podcast series where we expose the elephant in the room. The elephant's name, the gender pay gap. I am coming to you from Memphis, Tennessee, located on the banks of the mighty Mississippi River. Nestled in the southwest corner of the state, Memphis is home to the blues, barbecue, and so much more. I am your host, Gwendolyn Tucker.
Thank you so very much for joining me for this episode of Zap the Gender Pay Gap. I am your host, Gwendolyn Tucker. Look for me on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and other platforms where you find your favorite podcast. And please don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a review. I'd greatly appreciate it. You all, Why Women Settle has been on the brain for several weeks now. I don't know why. I had the hardest time pulling this episode out of the funnel. There must be a very important message for someone here. I hope that someone is you. If so, I hope and pray that you get the message loud and clear. As I struggled on how to best discuss this topic, I felt compelled to reach out to my accountability buddy, Siobhan. We went back and forth about it in the hopes that something would surface to explain the difficulty, but to no avail until I heard these words, don't settle. They were as loud and clear to me now as they were when I heard them back then. These two words, don't settle, were spoken to me in no uncertain terms a number of years ago by a woman also named Gwen, who was 20 years my senior. She knew I was struggling with a decision that could very well change the trajectory of my life. She shared many words of wisdom, but of all the things she said, don't settle was emblazoned on my mind and etched in my memory. Although that was then and this is now, I treasure her and her advice. I carry it around with me like a precious jewel. I urge others to do the same. Don't settle for less. You can have so much more. As I pondered this thought of why women settle, I stumbled upon this article in Psychology Today written by Seth Slater. The title, Why We Settle for Less While Wanting More. The title is what first caught my eye. Then the subtitle, which is this, How Habit Keeps Us from Fulfilling Our Desires. Now, I can think of times when I have been or was tempted to settle for less while wanting more. But how does habit keep us from fulfilling our desires? What in the world does habit have to do with why women settle? I wanted to know more. As I started reading the article, I discovered some valuable nuggets. So valuable that I feel compelled to share a few of them with you. As you listen, you'll see why. But first, let me give you some of the backstory. It turns out that the author, Seth Slater, is a former dolphin trainer for the U.S. Navy. In 1959, this program was started so researchers could study how fast the creatures could swim in an effort to improve ship and torpedo performance. Sounds interesting, doesn't it? This was new news to me. I love learning new things, but back to what I was saying. As a trainer, Seth inherited a dolphin whose despair upon emerging from a culture of lack was so profound that it nearly killed him. His learned helplessness, which was really a profound form of apathy, had reached a point where all he did was float listlessly at the surface of the water without moving for hours on end. The dolphin was in dire need of rehabilitation and even required retraining to become willing to eat. And then he wrote this, We humans become vulnerable to the same sort of phenomenon when, for example, unscrupulous employers seek to maximize profits at our expense. After becoming desensitized, we sometimes fail to seek the pay raises we've earned. Unfortunately, our places of work are all too often ripe with examples of how some habits serve to work against us, not for us. But we can't fulfill our desires without the willingness to ask for what we want. And sometimes we need to do it loudly. On a previous episode of my podcast, episode 61 to be exact, I told you that if your boss has not been coming to you to talk about your performance and pay, you were going to have to go to your boss. You are going to have to ask for some things. If you are in the habit of not asking, you might be like that dolphin. And if you are not inclined to asking, then you may be prone to settling. So, what does settling have to do with zapping the gender pay gap? Wait, wait, wait. I bet I can hear you say, yes, that's right. You know my reply. Glad you asked. And it's this: when we learn to settle, when it becomes a habit, settling affects every area of our lives, at home and at work. Now, in the workplace, women are consistently underestimated, underrated, and undercompensated. Let me say that again. Women are underestimated, regarded as less capable than we actually are. Women are often underrated, not valued or rated highly enough. And then women are often undercompensated, paid less than is warranted. Now, some don't even believe the gender pay gap exists, but it does. And plan to join me next time for the big reveal. You'll be amazed, but the numbers confirm that women earn less than men. But whether underestimated, underrated, or undercompensated, the net result is the same. Women in the workplace are often underpaid. It's one thing to ask why women settle, but the real question is, why do you settle? What makes you settle for less when you could have so much more? Earlier this year, I told you that we've been made for more in 2024. I also referenced an article with 50 ideas to help you move forward in 2024. The ideas covered a number of areas: love, life, and work. Since this is Zap the Gender Pay Gap, I want to make sure you get as good as you give at work. No, your company can't pay you what you're worth because you're too valuable. But guess what? They can pay you what your contributions are worth. In what ways have you become accustomed to things as they are? Is your pay raise overdue? Have you failed or neglected to seek a pay raise you deserve? Remember, if you are not inclined to asking, then you may be prone to settling. And when that happens, you know who suffers? You do. And your family does too. Remember what Seth said: we can't fulfill our desires without the willingness to ask for what we want. And sometimes we need to do it loudly. We women settle for less for a reason. What's yours? What makes you settle for less when you could have so much more? Remember what I said about the woman named Gwen who gave me some wise counsel? She knew I was tempted to settle for less, and she also knew I could have so much more. She didn't want me to make a mistake. I too, like her, don't want you to make a mistake either, one that you will later regret. If you are settling for less, but you want so much more, please don't settle. If the habit of not asking keeps you from fulfilling your desires, know this: habits can be broken. Old habits can be unlearned, and new habits can be learned. Now's the time to replace that old habit of settling with a new one. I can definitely assist you with that. To set up a call to find out how I can show you how to close your pay gap and to determine if we are a good fit, message me. Go to gwendolynjtucker.com and click on contact. A link is in the description box below. You can reach out to me there. Women, you work hard for your money. I can show you how to take home all of it. Thank you so very much for joining me for this episode of my podcast. Plan to join me next time for the big reveal. A new survey about the gender pay gap is hot off the press, and you will be amazed at the results, I promise. If you like what you hear here, please invite a woman in your world to listen in too. If you missed a previous episode, just take a listen. I look forward to seeing you here next Wednesday at noon Central Standard Time for the next episode of Zap the Gender Pay Gap. Until then, please be well.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Zap the Gender Pay Gap. Please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow me wherever you get your favorite podcast. I am your host, Gwendolyn Tucker. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time.